Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the final double weekend of racing this cyclocross season, the Exactcross in Sint Niklaas, under quite sunny conditions, a beautiful early spring end of winter day, and then the not so nice weather conditions in Brussels for the men's race with snow coming down, a return to the winter. And with me here to discuss it nice and warm from inside the big Universities Cross in Brussels, with me here Issam. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Let's start by discussing the men's race. As said, different weather conditions, different type of courses. Sint Niklaas, actually a very simple but beautiful course, has a big hill in the beginning of the lap, then sets out to the forest, comes back with a number of off-cameras and a easy sand section at the end, a long start-finish straight. Brussels, more technical, several off-cameras around the campus. And as said, indeed, different weather conditions. But what wasn't different were the eventual riders on the podium and the main protagonists in the race. Let's start in Sint Niklaas. The battle for the win there was quite entertaining on the men's race. We had 9 leaders for most of the race, but eventually Michael van Toerenhout broke clear just over the halfway point of the race. He opened a good gap. He had been very active. Gerben Kuipers, his teammate, had also made a couple of moves, and most pressure rested on the shoulders of Niels van der Putten to close it. It seemed like Van Toerenhout had it in the bag, 8-second gap going into the final lap. But Van der Putten was on a charge. He sped up and kind of came close, but then faltered a bit when the gap was 2 or 3 seconds. However, with a phenomenal sprint out of the final corner, and it was really wonderful to see that on the drone shot. I mean, we've seen a lot of drone shots at the Olympics. In the more extreme sports there, they really give a good sense of speed. I think the drones in cyclocross are also a really nice addition, and definitely here in the sprint it was super cool to see Van der Putten really flaming it from behind, overtaking Van Toerenhout, who you could see very good from that angle already needed to sit up quite early. Van der Putten taking the win ahead of Van Toerenhout. I don't really think we can call this a blunder from Pauwelsausen. They did what they could. They used some team tactics. Van der Putten was very strong, and for me the lingering question was, and honestly still is, was Van der Putten so cold-blooded that he deliberately left that gap at 2 seconds and didn't want to risk any team tactics again in that final stage of the lap? Or was he really at his limit and Van Toerenhout really giving his all as well, and it just came down to that sprint?
I don't think Van der Putten was that cool. I think that if he was able to bridge it when they were entering the sand section, I think that he would have liked that to happen as well. And, already be in the lead, because I wouldn't say it's the most crucial thing on that course, but you definitely want to try and be in the lead there in the sandpit. So I think that Van Toerenhout was just, giving it his all and really had to use some energy, and he was through it at the end of it. And I think that Van der Putten just had something left and played it very, I wouldn't say very smart, but he had the legs to do what he did. And you could maybe question Kuipers for not trying when he had the legs to maybe try and at least have one attempt of trying to block Van der Putten in one of the corners, because I think that if he would have done that, it would have been it would have helped him in a sense. But Kuipers, it was very evident that on the last lap, Kuipers was also struggling in a sense, and I was really struggling to keep it up with Van der Putten, who set a blistering last lap. And, at times we have seen that last lap maybe for third or maybe even like fifth. It was really a pleasure that now it really was broadcasted for the entirety of the lap, and we could see that special gift that he somewhat has when he is in the last lap. And he was in a position, to be fair, that when you look at it, I was thinking that it was in the back for Van Toerenhout, although Van Toerenhout seemed not at ease with the gap that he had, and he didn't look that comfortable. He was pushing as well, and he was suffering. And the final sprint, the shot that we got, it was honestly, the racing itself, it's almost like racing before the World Championships in a sense. It was a pleasure to watch and a great race. And to have these type of races after the World Championships is just we should be very happy, and in a sense we are lucky, and it was great to see.
You're completely right, because the last lap skill and clutch of Van der Putten is something we've seen in the past before. he really give him a tiny chance and he takes it. And this was really the example of that. And if you look at how the race went, the pressure was really on him all race. It's a good course for him. It was slippery, or not slippery, sorry, it was fast, and that's where he really excels in those conditions. And what I wanted to say is, drawing the bridge to today's race in Brussels, the conditions and the course there were completely different. The snow, it made it slippery, it made it treacherous. Not to say that Niels van der Putten cannot thrive in those conditions. He has won the Val di Sole World Cup before, but that's again different than this. Val di Sole, it was more of an ice ring, different type of sliding. Here it was more muddy, more slippery, and we know that in those conditions Michael van Torenhout really thrives. What we saw today is what Michael van Torenhout would love to see every single race of the season. Some mud, some tacky sections, the big off-camber where you need to be very deliberate about your line choices, other places where the line matters, where limiting the mistakes matter. Van Torenhout is such a consistent rider. He rarely ever makes a mistake, as where Van der Putten, you could see today, he was not feeling as comfortable in the early phase of the race. We had Van Torenhout take off early, Kuipers came with him, then Van Torenhout took off again later and Van der Putten rode back to second. So I think that was the difference here today, or on the weekend. Maybe Van der Putten and Van Torenhout are quite evenly matched physically, but I think that just depending on the conditions, you can see who's better in this phase of the season, and they have really come forward as the main protagonists at the end of the season, because these three names have been on the podium of, I believe, every race since the World Championships, excluding Maldegem, although no, it was not Kuipers on the podium in Lille. He didn't have a good day there, but Middelkerke, Sint Niklaas, and also here in Brussels, these are the men of the moment, and I think they will be quite sad that it's over next week.
Yeah, that's how it goes. You sometimes have that at the end of the season where certain riders just are able to act as if it is the start of the season. They have great form and the legs are good and they find a way to motivate themselves, and you could really see that with both Van Torenhout and Van der Putten and also Kuipers, that they are in a sense somewhat hungry for a good result. We have seen a Van Torenhout that at times struggle a little bit with the start, but when he is able to get through that phase, he wants to ride and go for victory. And it was also quite evident from the comments that were made by Mette Penningen that this TV race, and despite the fact that a lot of interest also goes to the Olympics, it is still a race that is broadcasted. It has interest. The articles are still written about it in a sense, so you will still see there is still a coverage, and you have to use that podium that is given to you in a sense. And I think that those three definitely on the men's side have shown themselves very well. And in Brussels, indeed, it was Van Torenhout who, I have to say, at some point, Kuipers looked a lot more comfortable than Van Torenhout did. Van Torenhout was sliding out, but compared to Van der Putten, yes, Van der Putten was struggling a little bit, and I don't know if he had the best day. I don't think that his legs were great. To me, at least, it felt that way, but he was also for sure not really comfortable with the surface, the conditions, and the course itself. While I think that if it was a faster race, maybe then it would have been a race that Van der Putten would like a little bit more, because he is someone that loves those off-cambers in his sands and the corners and the twisty part of this course, which it is, there's not a lot of sections where you can really use that power. There are some, but it is minimal in a sense compared to other courses, and it's unique. It's a different course. Some like it, some don't, and with these circumstances, Van der Putten was just not having enough to battle with Kuipers and Van Torenhout there early on, and then was not able to follow Van Torenhout.
What's good to see about Kuipers is not just the form he has. I think we've mentioned that a number of times already, that's a great story, but also that today in Brussels, the way he's able to keep his own on these courses, technically he looks much better than the rider he was the last time he was at the front of the races. Back then he was really struggling quite a bit with everything, but now he is not perfect. It's not the A tier that he would be in terms of technical skills, but he's gone from like D tier or sometimes even E tier to at least C or maybe even B tier. He's made a lot of progression, and that will certainly help him in the upcoming races. Another rider that we saw do quite well was Felipe Orts. He finished 5th and 4th. He's been linked to Baloise in a move, or that would be a move after this season, Issam. What do you think about that potential move?
that would be a good move. I think that he will be in good hands in a sense. He has been training with Nice from time to time, and it seems that the relationship there was good. It was evident in Benidorm, so I think that will be a professional environment in a sense. They will be able to offer him something. I think that is hard to find in a sense. It's a constructed squad, and the people around them are also people with a lot of experience, and I think that would be a move that will make it for Orts. It was with Ridley, but I think that if he was going to go on his own as an individual, you will have to put a lot of effort and focus into things you rather don't want to really put any effort in. And I think that if you make a move like that to Baloise, I think that would also give him some peace of mind, in a sense that you are not, you're not involved in those things that you normally should be involved in if you are an individual, and you have to scramble for sponsors and all that. So I think that would be a very, very good move. And he is in a phase of his career, we have talked about that, where you don't really know where it will be going in terms of progress. You really hope that it is still something that he can continue to progress on in terms of how his form is currently, and he can hold on or even improve a little bit. So in a sense, you could maybe say it is a small gamble for Baloise, but it also makes sense because you see how he's riding. He's a rider where you can see that he's a top 5, top 10 rider in most of the races, if he has the legs and if he has a good day. It is definitely a gamble that is worth taking, in my opinion.
Baloise definitely needs something because Van der Haar is retiring at the end of the season. David Haverdings is leaving. He would ride for Krelan apparently next year, or definitely within the Roodhoofd Concertum. So they need something, right? Because Thibaut Nys is more and more likely to race an even smaller cyclocross campaign. So they need something besides Pim Ronhaar and their under 23. So if you look at who's on the market, Orts is definitely the best performing rider that's open and also within budget for them, because I'm sure they would have loved to bring back Nieuwenhuis, but they don't have the financial means for that. Tom van der Bos is in an old, smaller rumor also being linked to them, but we will see what comes from that. This one was fresh, so they definitely need something, and I think it would be a strong move there. We also saw that Ryan Kamp was in the top 10 in Sint Niklaas, and he too is being linked to a move. Belgian commentator Ruben van Gucht said that he, together with Mees Hendricks, would be joining a new Dutch team. I don't have any information on this, let me put that first, but it is quite interesting that news comes out on the same day that there is the announcement of a Canyon all-terrain team, which is sponsored by Shimano as well. They've already brought in Larissa Hartog, Jasper Okkeloen, and another gravel guy. It's a bit of a coincidence that stuff comes out on the exact same day, and they would certainly be a match with the ambitions of that team, so let's keep that in mind as well. For the rest, Issam, Cameron Mason last week was not good for him in Lille. He started here with 1 goal. He needed to finish within, I think, 4 minutes 30 of the race winner to secure a podium place in the X2O Trophy overall classification. And he did that, finishing 6th place, 2 minutes behind. Actually, a solid outing by him. That's really what we can say. He was not that far off 5th place. And then I think he can be very pleased finishing on the podium of that series. A bit of a silver lining after a season that's gone up and down the final podium series, Nieuwenhuis, Van der Putten, Mason.
It is, I guess, a positive way of ending your season, which for Mason, it was a season with a lot of promise, a lot of solid results, good results, but also a bit of the downs were involved in it. But I think that he shouldn't be looking at that right now. It's something that you have to work on, you have to improve and find a solution, I guess. But I think that today was a professional ride in a sense. He did what he had to do. He made sure that he got that podium spot in the X2O Trophy, and that must feel, I guess, in a way, it must feel like a achievement, and it is an achievement. To be able to perform well in a classification shows some form of consistency as well, despite the fact that Mason was searching for that very same consistency throughout the season in some of his results. So I think it's a step up, and then that is how he has to look at this season overall. It is a step up. It's maybe not the step that he would have liked and that some were expecting, but I think that it is still a step up, and he is still relatively young in his career, I think. So there's still this learning curve. He's still in a curve where you can improve. So let's hope that will be that will be something that we can see from Mason next season. And no doubt that if he finds some solutions, he finds some answers, and he's able to improve on this on from this season on to next one, I think that then we can enjoy Mason maybe even more at the front.
Let's move to the women's race there, because we also had some interesting, more common, I would say, post World Championships racing there, because on the men's side it's been fairly consistent, and normally you see a lot of inconsistencies, riders jumping up and down the rankings here because fatigue is kicking in. And on the women's side I think we saw a bit more of that, also a relatively close race in Sint Niklaas. 4 leaders, Alvarado with Van der Heijden, Brandt and Ribeirol. Alvarado first to drop, Ribeirol got dropped in the last lap, or before the last lap actually, and in the last lap it was Van der Heijden who also cracked under the pressure of Brandt. Then in Brussels, totally different type of racing. I mean, Alvarado, okay, the course suited her a lot more with the technicalities. You could see on that off-camera the line she was taking was a lot better, but she was also a lot stronger because she punctured, got set back, packed herself, came back to Brandt, dropped her, took the win. Brandt coming in second in her last race of the cyclocross season. She has secured the overall win a long time ago on the 1st of January, but she honors her contract with the organizers. Third place here went to Manon Bakker after a duel with Inge van der Heijden. You can definitely see it's been a long season. Fukunen not looking like she's been looking this season. Bentveld, Worst falling quite far down the rankings. So that much is, I think, to be expected at this point of the season. But Alvarado and Brandt, kind of the 2 women of the season, together with Pietersen continuing to do what they've been doing this year, taking wins. Course conditions played a role. I think fatigue plays a role. Brandt apparently not been training that much anymore, only doing the races and recovering between them to be more fresh when the road season starts. Alvarado's solid outing today in Brussels didn't really seem to be in the flow in Sint Niklaas. But still, a win is a win for her.
A win is a win, and it was quite the win, to be honest, the way she did it. But I have to agree. I think Brussels normally is a course for sure that Alvarado suits a little bit better. But there was maybe also a little bit more punch behind it than there was with Brandt. Brandt was not bad. She was strong. Kind of just felt like Brandt was a bit flat. There was not really so much behind it. And, Alvarado was, of course, very unfortunate there with that puncture. But I think you could very well see that first lap that she was chasing, like, she's still believing in it in some form. She's still going at it. And that was important. That was key, I guess, to that chase, because you have to believe in it. Because if you don't, you might believe in it a little bit too late, and then there's not much time left to make it happen. But because she basically initiated the chase quite early on and really was on it, and also quite patient because she was held up by the traffic in a sense that was in front of her. She was very composed and had good legs. And this, you can see sometimes that when someone has a puncture, it costs them a little bit of time to recover. But from what I saw from her, it looked like she was right on it, and that is what you can do when you have a very good day. Of course, you can make the argument in a sense that she is one of the riders that didn't do that many races this season, so maybe there is some form of freshness compared to the others. But I also just think that she's also on a level now that is more a level that you can expect from Alvarado, and she found a good flow late in the season. She's motivated to win the races, and she's winning them when she's able to. She's winning them in quite strong fashion, and today was also rather impressive despite the puncture.
I was certainly impressed by the way that she was riding, especially that little arena area around the what is it called? The section of the campus where the students hang out in the summer and look at the grass that's been tarnished by the cyclocross in the winter. Like the way she was riding there, the way she was running, and with one hand on the stem, grabbing to the post for the Belgian swing, it was quite impressive. The line she was taking when it was still rideable, those were smart decisions. You could see those things kind of come together and really function for her. So it was good to see. Brandt, I don't think, really cares anymore. She's out now. She'll be back on the road fairly soon for the Strade Bianche. But I must say, two riders here. I mean, for Inger van der Heijden, it must be a nice mental boost to end the season like this. And for Bakker, Issam, quite impressive, actually. I mean, she's racing with a narrowed artery, iliac artery, and she's undergoing surgery after this. I mean, this is quite good for her. We've seen her do well in this part of the season before, but she is a rider that's out of contract, and I don't know. We haven't really heard anything from it, but she needs a couple of performances like this, and that injury couldn't have come at a worse time for her because that really affected her.
Yeah, for sure, and that is, hopefully she can also recover from that, and hopefully that is also one of the underlying issues that costed her in a sense in terms of performance, and she can find her way back. But yeah, today was definitely a very good ride. This is a course though that she has a history with in a sense. She has been able here to get on the podium a couple of times, if I recall correctly. So it is a course that, despite her form physique, and she is someone that can get really technically is very gifted in a sense and can get through the corners quite well, and she likes these off cambers and all that, and you could see that today there was some confidence there, but there was also good legs, and that is also kind of what you need here. It's in a sense not really that power dependent. If you have good legs, you can, and you have a good flow, hold your own quite well compared to your competitors, and I think that Bakker had such a day. And sometimes we have heard that sometimes you can have okay days, and then other times it starts to pick up again, the pain and all that, and then it hurts and it's difficult to race with. Maybe today was also just a better day overall, and it seems to be that way, and you could definitely see it in the result and in the way she was racing. So, and the same goes for Van der Heijden. Of course, the coverage is a bit less now after the Worlds, but it is mentally, it must mean something when you are able to finish on a high in a sense, because the season would have been over a couple of weeks ago. It would have been a bit more depressing the way Van der Heijden would have ended her season, because there was not really much behind those races. It was all at the back end of the top 10, not really being involved in the racing overall, and now it seems to be on the better hand in a way, and that is also how you're going to end the season and think about the season in a sense. And then you can look back and be like, hey, I was European champion. I had a very good season. I had a strong season overall. I had my dip, but who cares? I have a jersey, and that is at the end what matters. So I think that is definitely a positive way to head towards the last race of the season in Oostmalle.
One thing I would still like to say here is that I noticed something interesting during today's race, or I've been thinking about it a bit more this season already, but if you look at the two teammates, Ribeiro and Bakker, they're quite similar in their riding style. I mean, they're both powerful, they're quite big in the women's field as well. They're definitely not riders who you really want to go side by side with, because you'll be bodied out of there. Both have a very aggressive riding style as well. I mean, aggressive, not just, okay, we know Bakker last year, she had that incident, the DSQ from Maldegem, and Ribeiro has had the head loss. That's not what I'm getting at here, right? It's the same on the men's side. If you're Lars van der Haar or Ile Iserbyt and you go side by side with Joran Wieseuren, yeah, you know it's not going to end well for you. And on the women's side, that's how it most of the time is with Bakker and Ribeiro. And that's not because, in Sint Niklaas, of course, in the group pack, who was the one causing the most carnage? It was Ryan Kamp. And they don't do it because they are, and with they I mean Ribeiro and Bakker, because they are aggressive and sometimes maybe a little bit over the top like Ryan Kamp. It's more just their physique that makes them strong in battling like that. So what is the difference then between them? Well, Issam, you've talked a lot about Ribeiro needing to tidy out her riding style, and I think Bakker to an extent has kind of done that over the last few years, right? Like, she's quite consistent, quite smooth. You can see that still she carries a lot of risk in the way she rides. Like that ditch in the beginning of the lap, she was consistently riding it where others were getting off. She's a risk taker. She's not one to easily back out of things or get scared of things. On the off-camber, she takes the most risky line, but it yielded her a lot of return. Ribeiro, you just sometimes think like, yeah, if you could maybe race a bit more like Bakker, then where could you be? And for Bakker, you're sometimes thinking if you could just have the power that Ribeirol has, which we know is somewhere inside, but now we also know why that's not coming out of her, then there's a lot to gain. I still feel for both of these riders there's quite a lot of potential on certain courses, especially the more muddy ones, and they didn't get them this year. But yeah, I'm not really ready to kind of give up on Manon Bakker. I mean, okay, she's 27, and at that point, you can't really go into the, oh, she's still a talent. But there's, I think, still some potential in here for like really tough courses, Dendermonde, not the climbing courses, but even like more muddy editions of, I don't know, Merksplas that doesn't really get that muddy, but Hamme Zogge is coming back, those type of races. I still think there's a lot more in it, and you can see it at instances like this, but I would just love to see it maybe one time just throughout the entire season, like from the Christmas period until Worlds. It has to be somewhere.
I think both. Ribeirol, maybe, if you look at her season, there have been numerous races. I'm not going to get into detail because I could, but I have to watch it back a little bit. But I am convinced that there are at least 5 to 10 races in which she threw away a top 5 in terms of just being silly. You know, first lap wreck, crash, and then recovering, having another silly crash where nobody in the whole field has crashed from, the entire day. There's not been a single crash there, but there's Ribeirol. She actually made a step, in my opinion, this season, and it looked quite good. And I think that it was just a lot of, you take away a lot of promise from what you actually could have been able to achieve. I think it could have been a better season. I don't think there have been that many races for Ribeirol that were clean, and if they were, it was either, she had good legs and she was able to perform, or she didn't really have the legs and it wasn't really her course. And I think that maybe for Bakker, I would say that, you summed it up right, that she is a rider that when the conditions are more her way, she can definitely be up there with the better riders. I think that maybe then at some point you maybe have to make a decision and think about, should I not try and pick my races more carefully? For me personally, I think that Bakker maybe should approach the season more like that than trying to go for an entirety of a season, try to be well and try to perform in every race. I think maybe, I would compare it maybe to the way Albert was racing some of his seasons, where he was, some races was completely 15th, 20th, wasn't even in the picture, and then other races he knew, okay, this is a race that is quite important, I will be here. I know that the circumstances 9 out of 10 times will be my way. And then you're there, and those are the races where you have to perform and seize that moment. And I think for Ribeirol, she mainly has to try and maintain the form that she has right now, maybe improve a little bit, try to improve at least, and tidy it up, take it down a notch, maybe try and let things just happen in a sense in the first few laps. Don't feel that urge of trying to move up so early and or feeling that you're maybe in a situation that you don't really want to be in, and then try things that are a bit too crazy, lose your head and all that. We have seen that some riders just struggle a little bit by that and lose their head in the race and completely get seized up by a certain moment, and that is sometimes a mental aspect, and then maybe you have to try and talk to someone about that. I'm no expert, and I definitely not try to claim I am one, but we have seen in other sports as well where you have these type of things. If I look at motorsports, for example, you have certain riders that have those characteristics or whatever the name is, but it is just something that they then have, and when they talk about it and they try to fix it in a sense, they're able to get over it, stay a little bit more calm, and in situations where they normally would maybe make a decision that is a pure emotional one, they are able to control that urge and make sure that they get through that first lap and the first 2 laps safely in a sense, and then they can go on with the day, and then they have the legs and the potential to actually make use of what you have in you. And it's for Ribeirol for sure. I have talked about it a lot, and maybe I'm rambling a little bit too much right now, but it is something that I see and I'm passionate about. I mean, I'm not a Ribeirol fan, but it's just a shame in a sense to see someone with that potential throw it away with just a bit of a unfortunate moment.
Then maybe finally to end this is some short applaud from me for the season of Rebecca Garibaldi. A really great season for her. She's turning 30 this year, and that is, and you think back to the interview that Graciotti gave to the RAI, where it was like, we can say 29, 30 years old, but it's not, and who cares if she's 31 or 33 or 45. If she performs like this, she should be at the World Championships, and I think this is very likely her last race of the season. I don't know if she's here for Oosmale. I don't really assume so, but what a season she's had. I mean, such a leap in progression. I mean, we've seen her do relatively okay in a few smaller races in Belgium. Last year, I recall a maybe 7th place or something in Bol that was, and this year just the step forward in the World Cups and the ways that she's been performing. Also here, 5th place in Sint Niklaas, finishing off here with an 8th in Brussels, but we had a really good result for her in Terralba, 8th place. Okay, you can say, well, maybe not the strongest start field, but 10th in, where was that, in, I don't remember, one of the Christmas races, 9th in Hogerheide, just outside of the top 10 in Benidorm. A phenomenal season for her, and it's great to see her end it on such a high, and hopefully this is not a one-time off. Hopefully she is a rider who flourishes at later age, or as the Belgian commentator would say, it's like French wine, gets older with the age, a favorite saying on the TV sometimes. Let's hope that that's the case for Garibaldi, because it's been a spectacular winter for her, if she doesn't race Oosmale. And who knows, because we will certainly be covering that, Issam. Thank you so much, and see you next week.
It's going to be broadcasted?
Yes, it's broadcasted on Sporza.
Thankfully. No, that's good. Okay, well, then we definitely will cover it, and extensively. I'm looking forward.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. That will be it for this weekend. As said, we will be back next week. See you guys then. Goodbye.